Do Mongolians celebrate Christmas? No, Christmas is not an official statutory holiday in Mongolia, like in the Western European and North American countries. But beginning from December leading up to January 1st, you will feel the Christmassy vibes everywhere you go, especially in the capital city, Ulaanbaatar. You will see Christmas trees with colorfully glittering and sparkling Christmas decorations everywhere in coffee shops, department stores, offices, outside of schools, inside the schools, and in the main square, as well as at homes of Mongolian families. In public places such as department stores, coffee shops, and restaurants, you will even hear the popular English Christmas songs, especially in Ulaanbaatar. You will even see TV commercials featuring Santa Claus, Christmas trees, and people wearing sweaters and outfits with prints of Christmas theme. As I said, it's not an officially celebrated holiday in Mongolia, as it is a country that is predominantly Buddhist, but this is how Mongolians celebrate the New Year. Mongolians have adopted many of such Christmas elements and incorporated them into their New Year celebration without their religious connotations. There is a tiny Mongolian Christian community who celebrate Christmas within their families or churches, but for the majority of non-Christian Mongolians, this is how they celebrate the New Year. Although the Mongolian New Year's trees do resemble the Christmas trees, we call it New Year's tree, and it has no religious connotations with Christianity. The very first and formal name for the Christmas tree when it was introduced to Mongolia was Sultmod, which means in the Mongolian language a spiritual tree. We have a popular Mongolian song that was specifically composed for the New Year, titled as Sultmodni Nadam, which can be translated into English as Song of the Spiritual Tree Festival. It was composed in 1957 by famous Mongolian composer Konchuk Sumla and is still popular today. Here is another version of this song's music featured by young Mongolian students from the Mongolian State Conservatory, and this version is my favorite, and I want to share this beautiful piece of music with you. The Mongolians even have their own version of Santa Claus, but instead of Santa Claus, we call it Olingovo, which means Winter Grandpa. The Winter Grandpa has the same role as Santa Claus, but wears different costume, which resembles the traditional Mongolian outfit, Del, but in glittering blue or white color. The white costume of Winter Grandpa represents a holy white spirit and peace, while the white beard symbolizes longevity and wisdom. The top of their head has a red tassel, which means they are red-tasseled Mongols, because Mongols historically and traditionally wear a hat with red tassel. The red tassel symbolizes fire, and fire is a symbol of eternal growth, wealth, and success for Mongols. As you may notice, the Mongolian national flag has a fire symbol. Winter Grandpa greets with people by reciting the piece of poetry which reads, "I'm your gray-haired grandpa, and came with my snow girls from the land of snow and ice, by riding my white horse above the pointy trees and below the cloudy sky. I am excited to greet with you, my children. You witness the golden cradle of history, and you are the master of your own achievements and the future of glory." Unlike Santa Claus, the Mongolian Grandpa of Winter doesn't come down the chimney or put presents under the New Year's tree, but appears at New Year's parties and New Year celebrations to give gifts to children in kindergartens as well as the school children. The Winter Grandpa also appears at New Year parties of offices and gives presents to employees who demonstrated the best performance and achievement at work. The Winter Grandpa is accompanied by snow girls who also wear glittering white or silver dresses with the snowflake-like decorations and a fairy cap or snowflake-like crown. In the 1990s, as a result of Mongolia's opening to the outside world, in particular to the Western countries, Santa Claus was introduced to Mongolia with his attractive red costume and hat. But many Mongolians used to think that Santa Claus is the English translation of Winter Grandpa. However, as many Mongolians are nowadays exposed to the Western culture through studying abroad and traveling overseas, we can now distinguish the difference between the Western Santa Claus and the Mongolian Winter Grandpa. This is another version of how the Western Christmas cultural elements are Mongolized. Let's listen to Jingle Bell, played by band of Mörnhu, a traditional Mongolian musical instrument. You may probably want to ask whether these elements are part of indigenous Mongolian culture or an imported one. This is an imported culture. The Mongolians adopted this culture from Russia in the early 20th century. The Mongols have had their own traditional lunisolar calendar that they had developed and inherited from their ancestors, as well as passed down to their successive generations. The traditional lunisolar calendar of Mongols was determined based on the moon phase and the time of the solar year, that is the position of the sun in the Earth's sky. In the early 1900s, a Danish family who settled in Hupskil province in northern Mongolia installed an electric generator in their wooden house and lit up a Christmas tree at home. The local Mongolian people were amazed with the Christmas tree, and for the first time they got to know the New Year celebration and Christmas tree. This is maybe the first time how Mongols were exposed to the Christmas tree and the Western New Year celebration according to the Gregorian calendar. It was recorded in the historical sources that in the early 20th century, more precisely in 1910, the very first celebration of the Christian New Year was observed by Mongol nobleman and governor of the northwestern province, whose name is Nawajantsing. Nawajantsing used to live on the border between Mongolia and Russia in northern Mongolia and had Russian friends, and he used to celebrate the New Year together with his Russian friends every year. The historical sources further noted that Nawajantsing used to invite his Russian friends to his wooden log house, where he put up a Christmas tree, and together they used to have a Christmas party and play the accordion. According to the historical source, Nawajantsing was someone who appreciated the Russian culture and used to wear European style of clothes made of leather, and also used to ride a bicycle, which were not something that was common among the Mongols in the early 20th century. Later in the 1930s, a famous Mongolian writer and the founder of modern Mongolian literature, whose name is Natsudorj, celebrated the New Year in Mongolia. Young Mongolian intellectuals who had studied in Western countries such as Germany gathered at Natsudorj's house on the evening of December 31st in 1931 to celebrate the New Year in Mongolia. The other Soviet Russian expats working in Mongolia joined the New Year celebration at Natsudorj's house, and they together partied until 2 a.m. on January 1st, drinking and toasting champagne. So many Mongolians consider that this was the very first New Year celebration that took place in Mongolia. Technically, the New Year, according to the Gregorian calendar, was officially celebrated in Mongolia first time in 1924 and in 1925. On November 26 in 1924, Mongolia approved its first constitution and proclaimed itself as the Republic of Mongolia. One of the many reforms in the country was the abolition of the traditional lunar calendar and the adoption of the Western Gregorian calendar. Therefore, the Mongolian people celebrated the New Year on January 1st in 1925, following the Gregorian calendar. At that time, the Mongolian people were not familiar with the New Year that follows the Gregorian calendar. So in 1925, the Mongolian people essentially celebrated their own traditional Mongolian Lunar New Year on January 1st, but according to the Gregorian calendar. So this event is similar to how the Japanese people started celebrating their own traditional Japanese New Year on January 1st, according to the Gregorian calendar in the late 19th century, more precisely in 1873. Prior to 1873, the traditional events of the Japanese New Year were celebrated according to their own traditional Japanese lunisolar calendar. The historical records indicate that celebrating the traditional Mongolian Lunar New Year according to the Gregorian calendar was highly appreciated and strongly supported by the Mongolian authorities. Therefore, the January 1st was officially declared as a statutory holiday in Mongolia first time in 1925, and it still remains as a statutory holiday until today. Despite the fact that Mongolians started following the Gregorian calendar in 1925, the New Year's tree and Winter Grandpa were introduced later in the 1940s. In 1946, the Central Committee of the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party and the political authorities of the Mongolian People's Republic organized the State New Year celebration at the State Central Theater in Ulaanbaatar. There, the Winter Grandpa and the Mongolian version of Russian Ded Moroz and the Christmas tree were staged first time in Mongolia officially. The Winter Grandpa is a Mongolized version of the Russian Ded Moroz, which has roots in Slavic mythology. The Winter Grandpa is the direct Mongolian translation of Russian Ded Moroz into Mongolian language. The very first Winter Grandpa was the Mongolian state-honored artist Chimidosser, and he was only 28 years old at that time. But the very popular Mongolian winter grandpa was another state-honored actor whose name is Bombsuru. And he had been winter grandpa since 1960s until he passed away in 2010. The Mongolian people were truly used to his voice and gesture as their winter grandpa, and many people still believe that he is the most convincing winter grandpa of all time. In Russia, in East Slavic culture, Ded Moroz is accompanied by Snow Maiden that is considered as his granddaughter or a kind of helper. The Snow Maiden wears long silver blue robes and a furry cap or a snowflake-like crown. She is a unique attribute of Ded Moroz since Santa Claus in other Western European and North American cultures do not have a female companion like Russian Ded Moroz. The same concept was imported to Mongolia as well. The winter grandpa is usually accompanied by snow girls dressed in beautiful white and glittering dress. Every primary school and kindergarten girl's dream is to be chosen for this snow girl to accompany the winter grandpa. The Mongolian people who grew up in the 1950s and 60s often reminisce over how they were first time exposed to the New Year tree and winter grandpa and how the New Year celebration brought joy to them. For example, a famous Mongolian folk singer and state-honored artist Chimitseye recalled in one of her interviews that when she was a little child, her mother used to decorate the golden karagana with handmade toys for a New Year's tree. As you may know, the golden karagana, also known as Siberian pea shrub, is a kind of shrub native to Siberia and Mongolia. So the Mongolian folk singer said that was how she got to know the New Year's tree in rural hoarder's life in Mongolia. So you can see now the Russian New Year was effectively Mongolized and became one of the most celebrated and the most popular holiday in Mongolia, that people truly enjoy the moment with their family members and loved ones. But during the socialist period, because of the socialist mission to make everything collective and cooperative in socialist Mongolia, every office, business organization, school and kindergarten used to celebrate the New Year with their co-workers, school children and kindergarten children together. This socialist tradition still remains the same in today's Mongolia. Because of the socialist ideology to create communism in Mongolia, the winter grandpa used to give gifts to school children who only demonstrated excellent academic performance, more specifically those who got only A grade, and those who are talented or gifted, such as talented singers, dancers, or those who demonstrated excellent athletic abilities. For adults, winter grandpa also used to give presents to workers who demonstrated excellent performance at work. Although this tradition still continues today in democratic Mongolia, but it is no longer the same for children. Since the beginning of 1990s, all children, regardless of their academic grades, nowadays receive presents from winter grandpa. Although the New Year celebration is a holiday of European origin, it has turned into a beautiful festival that leaves lasting memories in the hearts of Mongolian people, especially for children. The New Year celebration creates a spiritual atmosphere that inspires Mongolian people. Therefore, it has become one of the holidays that is eagerly awaited and celebrated even more happily and festive way than the country's Independence Day. This is the time of the year where people feel the joy, positivity, excitedness, and the cheer, regardless of their socioeconomic status, no matter whether you are wealthy or poor, whether you are privileged or disadvantaged, whether you are young or old, people cherish this happy moment.